Merhaban.
Merhaba.
All right, can you hear me?
Evet.
Let's go. So, what's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary. And I'm here with my beautiful wife. Say hi, boo.
Hi everyone, I'm AKDI and I'm from Turkey. And today we are actually reviewing a Turkish movie, Mustang.
Yes, and this film was made by a person whose name I'm not going to pronounce. So I'll give Acti the right to do the honors for saying all the Turkish names in this film.
Okay, so the director is called Deniz Gamze Ergüven, which is a woman, a French-Turkish director, if I'm not mistaken. And and then we have like the five girls who are the main characters of the movie, at least like three of them, I would say, or two. We have like Güneş Şensoy as Lale, Elit İşcan as Ece, Doğa Zeynep Doğuşlu as Nur, İlayda Akdoğan as Sonay, and Tuba Sunguroğlu as Selma. And these are the five girls.
Right. So this is a film that I picked out and we watched it last night. And I can say I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it had good pacing, great cinematography, and an interesting and captivating story. This is probably, if I remember right, like the third Turkish film that we watched this year. And even though I love The Wild Pear Tree a lot as a film and as a story, this one I can say I will probably remember more. And it left a more lasting impression. So overall, I really enjoyed it. How did you feel about it?
I liked it overall, and I agree with you on like the cinematography. There were like really heartwarming scenes in terms of like just, seeing girls having fun and being girls. But as a native Turkish speaker, there were some like lines or like how the lines delivered, it felt weird and like a bit fake. At certain points, I don't know if like a non-Turkish person could, know that or could understand that part of the story. But yeah, there were like some parts where it felt like, okay, like that just felt like a homemade movie, you
Yeah, I
know?
think I think that might be because Deniz, the director and writer of this film, probably grew up in France. So maybe
Yeah.
her Turkish might be a bit shaky. So
Yeah.
like she was Google translating dialogue to put in the script.
A little bit like it felt like a little chat GPT at points, you know? But
Okay.
overall, like, I like the themes and yeah, it was like nice scenery and all sorts of things. Yeah, I think like the starting point was good.
I think for all of the Turkish films we've seen thus far, like this year, none of the dialogues have been natural. Like the movie The Wild Pear Tree, the people were going off on long philosophical rants and having very long, deep conversations using flowery language that even you said like nobody talks like that for real. And I wanted to ask you, like, are there Turkish films where people are actually having normal, general talk that most people would have?
Yeah, of course there are. But the thing, like, what makes this movie's dialogue different from, like, for example, Nuri Bilge Ceylan's movies, is that, like, for, like, in The Wild Pear Tree, for instance, the reason like he made those dialogues long and like, flowery was intentional. And as the viewer, I can like understand that that was intentional. But in Mustang, it doesn't feel intentional.
Hmm.
It feels like, yeah, it's an error.
I see. The reason I asked is because it's possible that maybe, for me, not as a Turkish speaker, but maybe you might know this, that in films, maybe there's a difference in how people speak, versus real life. You know, back in the day in old American films, people used to talk in this certain accent that nobody really used, or,
Hmm.
talk in long ways like in Casablanca that nobody would really talk about, but I thought maybe that might be the case for Turkish cinema.
Yeah, we had that era too, of course, the over exaggerated like gestures and lines. But now, like, normal daily Turkish cinema, mainstream Turkish cinema is not like that.
Right,
You know,
right.
it is very natural, or it can be very natural.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I think it might be good to talk about like our relationships to Turkey. And I think we both, come at it from a different perspective. So I've lived like I would say a good portion of my life off and on in Turkey to some degree, right? I think if I counted up all the months together, it's about 2 years of my life that I spent in that country, right? A good
Yeah.
half in Istanbul, another half of that time in Marmaris with a little garrison sprinkled there. And I'm not going to act like I'm an expert on Turkish culture, but, looking at it from the outside perspective as an outsider and experiencing it and being there with you, I felt like this film was, some of the rawest expressions of like that Turkish culture. Like, of course you have sexism like as the main sort of problem within this film, but there's also parts of it that are like touching and down home, like when the grandmother is teaching the little girls how to cook. And, there's the wedding ceremony and just stuff like that. And then also you have the scenery, like, Turkey's a beautiful country. You got the sea, you got the mountains, greenery in the forest, all that sort of stuff. So it felt like alive, in bringing the country's culture to the forefront, if that made sense. It felt authentic. But, for you and, your relationship to Turkey, how does this film like match up?
Um, yeah, I mean, I like those representations of the culture. Obviously, like, it's good to see that the world is getting to know Turkish culture and, special things in it. But at the same time, I was like a bit sad that it was part of like this very bad thing, It was very conservative, and it's sort of like what made the lives of these girls miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was sort of sad because, for example, for me as a Turkish girl, those things like learning recipes from my grandma or going to weddings, having my own Turkish wedding, those were like good memories.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the same for everyone. And yeah, like just going online, I've realized that most Turkish people hate this movie because they are saying that this was done for the Western media.
Mm-hmm.
And they also find the director unrelatable because they're saying, oh, like this girl who grew up in France, went to fancy art school, is making a movie about like this story. And this story is just like one of those stories that would make a true crime documentary in Turkey. This is not a typical Turkish family.
Right. It's hella exaggerated. And I was actually going to say that when we start breaking down the story, when you really sit back and talk about the story, it's Rebel Ridge. It becomes sort of like, black exploitation, Turk exploitation to some degree. Cause when you think about the motivations of the villains in this film and what happens to the girls, it is true crime. Like I think even in Turkey, right, where there's rampant femicide and sexism is just in the air. Like what happened to these girls, even Erdogan would say, whoa, now, stop. That is too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like the length the characters go to in this movie to show the sexism and oppression of like patriarchy is sort of like to the next level.
And I also get the point that maybe some Turkish people might say like, oh, this is a person who's from us, but they're technically an outsider, right? And I think that goes to maybe an issue that might relate more to your country than to my experience, because in America, not many Americans leave, right? And especially Americans leave and then make films or art talking about their country, right? But in your country, you have quite a large diaspora, and the diaspora might be disconnected from the people that live in the country. Is there that issue really in Turkish society, like the difference between, the German Turks and the Turks, if that makes sense?
Yeah, but like it, I mean, you have different families in every parts of Turkey. Like you can have a super modern, viewed family even in the smallest places in Turkey. And especially like with the world, like, being introduced to internet and television and all of that, everyone has access to TikTok, Instagram, whatever. Like people are not like this anymore. And this feels like, I don't like, when I was watching it, I couldn't tell the timeline of the story. Like, what year is this really? Because the mannerism felt really old, you know. But like, there were things that was sort of like new, but then they had like old televisions, old telephones, and things like that. So it was sort of confusing.
Right, I get that. I get what you're saying. Like, the film might be anachronistic because it's, talking about this issue of sexism, but it's doing it like 50 years ago, but placing it in 2014. But the question I was asking is there a disconnect between diasporan Turkish people and people who still live in Turkey?
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yes, there is, because, and I guess it depends on like when they went away from Turkey as well. Because, for example, the Turks in Germany, usually the people who live in Turkey don't like them that much because they think, oh, they're stuck in the old Turkey mentality, but they went to Europe and they think they're like Europeans now, but they actually have like the backwards Turkish mentality. And yeah, and German Turks don't care about the Turkish people in Turkey, basically. And they just sort of maybe connect to it in a more sentimental way and
Hmm.
not really facing the reality of life in Turkey.
Yeah, yeah. I could.
So yeah.
Yeah, I could imagine that being the case. Like, you probably just hear about Turkey from your parents and you just idealize it, and then you go there for holiday and have a great time. But then you go back to Berlin and you're just like, balling out of control, making euros or whatever. Right. So there is that disconnect. And I could imagine the Turkish people who still live in the country probably, look at the people abroad with some level of envy, but also some level of like, we're superior because we actually stayed in our country and we really know our culture, our language, et cetera, et cetera. So there could be like that conflict too. And maybe that's where, Denise sort of falls in the middle, right? Because she's trying to tell this very important Turkish story, because I think all Turkish people and basically anybody else in the world can agree, sexism and oppression of women is wrong, right? But she's telling this story somewhat as an outsider and dialing it up to the extreme.
Yeah, like from some of the viewpoints that I read online, most women were saying that this was very surface level because sexism in Turkish society, whether it's in a bigger city or it's in a smaller city, it's more integrated into everyday life. And
Hmm.
it's not as simple as locking girls up in a house,
Right.
so that was sort of like the critique. And, the way that she decided to portray this story felt like, unrelatable and inaccurate.
But it's hard as hell to make that movie about microaggressions, right? And even, black film directors who are making movies nowadays, talking about the minutia of racism in America, right? Are finding it very, very difficult. Because how do you make a film just talking about like, yeah, getting followed around the store, people trying to touch your hair, people saying, you can't enter this club, stuff like that, right? Like that's not as scary as like 1940s America when we were getting lynched and churches bombed and stuff like that. So that's hard, right? That's why the film we watched, Karen, a lot of people hated it because it's like, it's not as, it doesn't ring off as well when you when you're talking about a neighbor, a white woman who's just harassing black people, right? Or like the film Hair, right, where the villain is just a black woman's weave that tries to kill her, right? Like that's hard to make scary, right? And it's hard. I could also see how it would be hard to make, the everyday sexism that people face, a compelling story. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, like when I think about the Turkish movies that portrayed sexism, it's more like a side theme. Like, yeah, there's the main theme is like, for example, a Turkish girl trying to rise to fame
Hmm.
or whatever, like, or it's a love story, but then the sexism is like a side story and we see the woman like going through it and getting discriminated because of her sex, but then that's not like the real aim of the story.
Right, right. Well, I think it might be a good time to talk about the story. Essentially, this movie is about, five orphan girls who basically get locked up in a house with these people that have adopted them and horrible things happen to them. Maybe we should have started off with that because maybe people listening might not know what the hell is going on. But I first want to talk about the title Mustang. And, a Mustang is a horse. It's like a wild horse in North America, right? And in the American mind, we think of the Mustang as like a symbol of freedom, a symbol of just, something that can't be caged in, that's allowed to just, be itself, right? And in this film, we have, 5 Mustangs who want to be free, but they don't have the ability to. I don't know if you thought about that, what the title means.
Yeah, I mean, at first the title was a bit confusing, but yeah, later I made that connection as well with the wild horses. But then again, like Mustang is not really a word that we usually use in Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
So then it also feels disconnected too. Like I wish it was something else. Not
Uh-huh.
that it's not like meaningful. I think it is still meaningful, but like if you're making a movie about where your ancestry is, right, where your
Mm-hmm.
roots are, I wish she used like something special, for Turkey.
Yeah, like dervishes. The
No,
wild
not that,
dervish.
but I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
It's a bit weird title for me.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, so basically the movie opens up with like these young girls, they're leaving school. It's their last day of school, and I believe one of the main characters, her name is Lale, right?
Yeah.
She's hugging on her teacher outside of school, and her teacher is saying like, I'm gonna miss you. She's kissing on her head. Lale is crying because she has to leave school, and the teacher's saying, we'll write every day. And Lale meets up with 4 other girls that she's going to like hang out with after school, and these are like her sisters. And by the way, when she also leaves, the teacher gives her like her address because she's going back to Istanbul. So the girls are like hanging out with some boys by the beach, and they're like playing, having fun after school and stuff like that. And they jump into the water with like all of their clothes on, and then they start playing like chicken fight with the boys. And a chicken fight is like when you get on somebody else's shoulders and try to push the other person on another person's shoulders into the water and stuff like that. And the girls are getting their t-shirts wet, and they're just playing out there. And one of the girls, I believe it's Lale, right? She gets upset because she's like, the other person cheated, and she's trying to fight the other person like, no, you cheated, you pushed me down. And she's trying to like get, revenge on them and stuff like that. And then they go into like the woods, into the beach, right? And they see like an apple tree or something like that, and they're stealing some of the food. And then this old man comes out with a gun and says, "What are you doing here? Get away. These are my apples." And the girls are like, "Well, we just took some apples, and don't worry that we put the apples in our shirts to make our titties look bigger. Like, just leave us alone." So then they leave and go back home, and they're laughing as they enter the door. But then their adopted mother sees them and brings each of them into the room and starts like whooping on them. And the girls are like, what's happening? What's happening? And the mother's like, you don't think the town talks? The people have told me what you girls are doing, letting boys touch you in inappropriate places, being little sluts. And so she like brings each girl in there one by one and starts, I don't know what she's doing because I didn't hear a belt or nothing, but she was, she was doing some business. She was getting it in. But yeah, what did you think of like those opening scenes?
Yeah, the first scenes where they were in the water, that was like just very relatable for me. Took me back to like my, young years when I was going through puberty, and like around my house, all the young people were boys. So I grew up with just like playing boys, and it reminded me just like how, what type of stuff games we played, and we had a pool, so we would always be in the water just playing like balls or wrestling and things like that. And yeah, then go into like the apple stealing scene. Yeah, like that was just funny, but obviously I thought the reaction of the guy pulling up a gun was just like too much, because usually, yeah, people might get mad if you steal from their garden, but they're not gonna pull up a gun on you.
Mm-hmm.
That was just like a bit much, and I was like, whoa, what is happening? What type of village is this?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, going into the house, and how like I think it was their grandmother. and how they like grandmother treated them. That was also like a bit excessive because she was like taking them into the room and then like beating the girls separately.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess like trying to deal with them and things like that. I was just like curious where the story was gonna go,
Mm-hmm.
but right off the bat, I thought like the scenery and the imagery, like when they were playing in the water and you know when they were also picking apples and things like that, those were like just cute moments where you
Mm-hmm.
see like little girls being girls and just having fun and doing like you know things that they shouldn't be doing in
Yeah.
terms of like Turkish society, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Once again, I just have to applaud the movie on the pacing. The movie doesn't do a lot of background, right? Like we kind of don't know like where the girls' parents are and the relationship they have to the people in the house. The adults in the house is kind of a bit obscure. We sort of piece it together. You're saying it's their grandmother. I'm thinking it's their adopted mother, like they were brought in or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. But either way, the point is made in the film that the five girls are not really, you know, considered like part of the family. They might even be related by blood. They might not, but they're seen sort of like as outsiders in this house to some degree that need to be controlled. You know, they're not really loved. They're tolerated in this house. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it feels like that. They feel like, you know, little crazy, out of control beings around the house.
Hmm.
Where like it feels like their older family members have to constantly deal with their, you know, bad behavior.
Right, right, right. And like they're viewed as being bad, right? When honestly they're just being like teen girls, right? They're not doing anything excessive that would warrant for the abuse that's about to happen to them. So basically, like, you know, the mother of the house is like whooping on the girls one by one, but then Lale runs outside and she like breaks a chair and she tears off like a piece of cloth and tries to set it on fire. And when the mother walks outside and sees Lale doing this, Lale says, "My ass was on the seat. I guess it's unclean too, so I gotta burn it." So then Lale runs outside and starts banging on the door of Miss Pentek, the lady, I guess, who snitched on the girls that they were playing with the boys. And so the people say, "Oh, Miss Pentek's at the market." Lale sees the old lady wearing a hijab, walking down the street, and she says, "Hey, bitch, you in that shit colored clothes, you want to talk shit about me?" And then her mother slaps the shit out of Lale. And the mother says, "I'm sorry, Miss Pentek." And she puts her hijab on and stuff like that. "I'm so sorry. Alhamdulillah." And then, yeah, that's when the movie just really just kicks into high gear. Cause I guess whatever that girl did, I feel like maybe there was more to the story than what was letting on. Because if you really break it down, right, okay, these girls do something bad at the end of school and the whole town is now gossiping about them and stuff like that. And so then their parents start like, you know, beating on them and locking them up. I feel like maybe there could have been more context to what they were doing. Like maybe they were really bad before. Do you think that might have been the case or no?
Yeah, I do think that because it's like, okay, so they went into the sea and then they come home and that's what they're getting a whooping for because it makes like a bit, it makes it seem like a bit excessive and it doesn't really make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just sort of like, it feels like it's there to create a villain, you know,
Mm-hmm.
so, and the villain is like their grandmother. So it's just
Yeah.
like, it feels a bit empty in that sense. And also
Yeah.
like, I wish there was more context in terms of their parents because
Yeah.
I was wondering like, okay, so their parents have died and, I was wondering what would be happening if their parents were alive.
Yeah.
Like, would they be doing the same stuff that their grandmother is doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or they wouldn't, like, you know, I was wondering about that too. Or maybe, like,
Yeah.
is this the reason why the girls are like that?
I have a theory about why the girls are like that, and specifically why Lale is like that. And yeah, let me clarify that and make it clear. So you were right. The older woman in the house is their grandmother because late at night, all the girls are like sitting in the living room because they're in punishment. And then guess who comes home? Errol. Errol is the man of the house, right? And he is apparently either the brother of their father or their mother, right? And Errol is yelling at their grandmother, who is his mother, but he is yelling at his mother, sort of like in the way like an abusive husband will like yell at his wife, and the mother is like terrified. And Errol is saying their parents have been dead for a decade now. You have to let it go. You said give them freedom, let them be girls. And what do? They're out here running around like little sluts and whores and stuff like that. And then Errol goes into the living room and starts like basically beating up the girls, like grabs one by the hair and says, "You touching the boys, eh? You touching the boys, you little bitch." And here's my theory. Here's my theory about Lale on why she is the one who is so, I guess, rebellious, and also why, maybe all the girls have some problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
My theory is that Lale is the youngest, and Lale might be the reason the mother died. Because maybe the mother died during childbirth, giving birth to her. And so maybe the girls maybe don't blame her, but maybe Lale blames herself, and she rebels against the world because her giving birth, her just being born took away a mother for the 4 other girls. You get what I'm saying? That's my theory.
I feel like if that was the case, then that would have been mentioned, or it would have been more obvious. Like Lale would have said something about it, maybe towards the end of the movie. And also, like, if the mother died like that, then what happened to the father?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what happened?
I think he could have committed suicide. He could have had a heart attack trying to work hella hard and ended up falling over. Maybe it could have been those things.
I mean, when I was watching the movie, I sort of imagined just like them getting into a car crash or something, and then both of them dying at the same time. So I didn't really, I didn't really think that, and I don't know. I just don't see that in Lale.
I see.
And I just think because like the reason why she's so rebellious and sort of like that when compared to her sisters is that she's the youngest. And even though like she doesn't have the same responsibilities as her sisters, like getting married and things like that, she sees everything that's happening. And I think she's scared of her own future as a kid. So she's trying to like, while she still has time, I feel like she was trying to like make it go away or reverse it or something.
Right. I think the film is saying by having Lale be the one who is the rebellious one trying to lead the resurrection or rebellion, whatever, is like they're trying to say like the younger generation will be the ones who will change the world, right? This movie could have easily been written with any of the other girls being Lale's character. But by making her the youngest, like we can literally see she's the smallest and youngest one, right? That's sort of representing that a new generation of women are going to have to fight against the patriarchy.
Yeah, I guess. And I think it also represents like, the more you grow older in an environment like this, the more you get brainwashed to do certain things. And then Lale is not at that level yet. And also like she has a different role model than like her mom, her grandmother. She has her bigger sisters sort of being like more sexually liberated, girls in her life.
Yeah. Now, what did you think of Errol's character when he was introduced?
It just felt like a very stereotypical, like, dominant male character in a family where they try to like constantly police girls and what they're doing. And honestly, like, I'm not saying I had someone like that, but for example, when I was growing up and I was going through puberty, if my mom said like, "Oh, what if your stepfather would think like this, or what if your uncle would think like this?" and I would get so mad at her, like compared to when she would just tell what she thought of me. And I would be mad because like, okay, why are you thinking about the guys? And why aren't you just like saying your opinion? Why are you trying to control me for them?
Right.
So that was like the annoying part a little bit also with the dynamic of the grandmother and Errol.
Yeah.
But he was a bit one-dimensional.
I think Errol is kind of one-dimensional, yes. It's easy to make him the villain, but I also believe he's like a stand-in for a lot of other parts of Turkish culture, right? Like while he only shows negative sides in relation to our protagonists, the girls, there are parts of the film where he's like he's that guy drinking rucka with his homies, watching the football game. He's the guy at the wedding busting his gun in the air. You know what I mean? Like, it seems also like there are other parts to him that, could have been delved into more and explained more and shown more. But I feel like the one dimensionalness of his character allows you to like read more into him. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I guess because I was wondering, like, is he married? Like,
Mm-hmm.
or I guess he's not, or I don't know, does he have his own children and things like that? I was sort of wondering because they never made that clear. And if
Mm-hmm.
he's not married, then why not? Because
Mm-hmm.
obviously this is like a very traditional society where, women and men get married very early.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, after Errol like basically abuses the girls and yells at his mother, like, if they've been fucked, it's gonna be your fault, mom, which is a wild sentence to say. Uh, the grandmother is like crying in the kitchen. She says, "Oh, I should have done better." And another woman is telling the girl's grandmother, like, "Yeah, it's kind of your fault. You didn't raise them right." And I thought that was interesting because, like, in this film, there are so many women that are collaborating with Errol and the other men in this society to try to like keep these girls in line. I always find that so fascinating that there are women collaborators for upholding patriarchy. And Errol takes the girls to go get their virginity checked. And they go to a doctor and they all get their hymens checked. And apparently all of them are virgins. And, on the ride back, the girls are like kind of looking sad, but they still make jokes with each other and laugh. And that's the cool thing about this film. Like, in between all these horrific moments, these girls still find ways to like hold on to joy and just naturally just being kids, right? The girls come back home after getting their virginities checked. The grandmother sort of like apologizes to the main girl who said, "I told you I was a virgin. You should have believed me." But the grandmother is like trying to play both sides of the fence. Like, it's okay. It's okay. But then after that, basically the grandmother starts taking away everything from the girls, right? Their computers, their phones, their books, anything that could lead them into temptation. And the girls are basically like locked in their rooms in summer break in beautiful Turkey, plus it's hot as hell, with nothing to do except like swat flies in their living room. Any comments about any of those things?
Yeah, talking about the town folk and especially like the town woman, it's a bit exaggerated, but sometimes that's how it is. Because yeah, like these women also don't really have anything else to do but to like, cook and clean and take the psychological and maybe even physical abuse that they get at home.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about like this specific place. You imagine they were probably married off to someone that they don't know and things like that. So I feel like if that's the condition, then those women sort of like, take it out on other people. It's like
Mm-hmm.
hurt people. They
Yeah.
don't have joy in their lives, so they're trying to like make everyone miserable
Mm-hmm.
as well. And yeah, like going to the hospital and getting their virginities checks and things like that. Once again, I think this, like, the camera shots are like very good because there was this shot where the girls were sitting all in like one big chair at the doctor's office and they were looking sad,
Mm-hmm.
and like worried about what's going to happen. And yeah, later on we see them in the car, like asking each other curious questions about like, oh, like, what did it feel like? Lale is asking like her sisters, how was it? What happened? And things like that. You can see like that curiosity from Lale, which is like sort of amusing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this little girl seeing her sisters being sexually active,
Mm-hmm.
and then like being curious about it and not really like thinking, oh, it's a bad thing.
Yeah, yeah. Now, how common is it for girls to get their hymens checked by their families? Because recently, or maybe not even recently, like a year or two ago, there was a famous rapper in the U.S., I believe it was T.I., who'd said in an interview, "I'd take my daughter to get her to check that she's still a virgin regularly." And that opened a big debate online about whether parents should be, up in their kids' sex life like that. or specifically their daughter's sex life? Like, does a parent have the rights to like take their kid to a doctor to check and see if she's still a virgin? You know what I mean? And is that something that's even common in Turkey?
From like the people around me and from like the girls I've talked to, I don't know anyone who went through that procedure, honestly. And I haven't gone through that procedure as well. And for me, like the way I was raised by my mom, she would tell me like, you know, if you do ever lose your virginity, like when I was smaller, obviously, she would tell me like, please tell me. I would want you to tell me. I would want you to share it with me. And then also she would make like a speech about how important it is. But she never really pressured me. She never really asked me, are you a virgin or are you still a virgin and things like that. I think at some point she knew that I was like getting physical with guys, and then she sort of assumed, and I didn't like share the story of how I lost my virginity with her. And I don't think she would have wanted it either. I don't know, but that's definitely weird. But I think like she just sort of made peace with it and didn't really bother me about it that much.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, how it should be. Like, why would you why would you take your daughter to the doctors to check if they're still a virgin when you're not checking your sons, you know?
Well, there's no way to really check your son other than find out your condoms are missing, right? But
Yeah,
I,
exactly. But why would you feel the need to do that?
yeah, I don't think a parent, I think a parent has the right to do it, I guess, because their child is the person that they're in charge of to take care of. But I don't think you should do it. If you can do it, but that's weird. I think if anything, if you think your daughter is being sexually active, just try to persuade her not to have sex, or wait till she's out of your house to have sex, or just give her the tools and the information to have safe sex, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what I would say.
definitely. I mean, the only reason I would take my child to have something like that is if I'm like suspicious that she's being sexually abused or something.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
that's the only reason I would do that. And then before doing that, I would talk to her,
yeah,
obviously. So
yeah.
yeah.
So basically the girls are getting locked in the house, but the boys in the neighborhood are still like chasing after the girls, particularly Soné. I hope I'm saying that name right.
Yeah, so nice.
Sonai. So Sonai is, I believe, the older one, and she has this boy in the neighborhood that really, really likes her so much that he drew a big sign in the street saying, Sonai, you are mine. Sonai, I love you. Sonai, give me that booty. And so, Errol sees this and he gets pissed. He's outside like trying to mark it out and marking it out with paints and stuff like that. And, yeah, basically the girls get locked up in the house and they're brought into a bad bitch academy. How to become the perfect housewives. They're taught
Wow.
by the old ladies in the neighborhood wearing hijabs how to make burek and sarma and all that sort of stuff. And they have to wear, the big bulky, hijabi clothes and stuff like this. And, yeah, basically, other than that, other than cooking and cleaning, they're basically left in the room to do nothing except like, play with each other and make, games with their feet. There's a very cute scene when the girls sort of discover how to make chewing gum from one of the old ladies, and they're trying it out and they say like, I guess it's okay and stuff like that. And it's cute. I like how in this film, like, when the girls are going through those scenes of learning how to be domesticated housewives, like they don't make that seem like the most brutal part in the world, right? I think the film does a delicate balance of saying like, hey, there's actually some good parts about, the role that a housewife has, a mother has, a wife has, and stuff like that. So they don't just turn those scenes into extensions of oppression. Does that make sense? Or maybe I'm missing the mark.
To me, it felt like they were just not interested, but at the same time accepting their fate,
Mm.
especially the older ones. Because we see Lale just like sort of, going around the house, doing like weird stuff around the house, catching flies and things like that. But like the other girls are actually like listening. At least they're trying to like make something. But I don't think that necessarily says that they're having fun at that
Mm-hmm.
moment. Because yeah, I mean, and also like what Lale said in these scenes, she said something like, and all the freedom was gone, and now it turned into like a wife factory or something, which was like, I like that line. But at the same time, do I like these scenes? Yes, it's like a reverse makeover, right? You love makeover scenes as a girl. At least I love them. And this was like the reverse, and you feel like sort of like the stuck situation that they're in. But it's at the same time, it was unrealistic. Like
What's unrealistic?
like grabbing all the townswomen and making a little course for them, making them wear like nunnery clothes.
Okay, number one, it's not nunnery clothes. Like, Turkey is a Muslim country. It's better than I do. And that's really how some people dress and live. And it's a small town that they're living in. So everybody knows everybody. So of course they would probably help out in making these girls, get ready to be wives, especially with what happens later in the film when some of these girls literally get married at 14, 15, whatever.
Yeah, it just, I don't know. For me, it felt like a fairy tale, like the bad part of the fairy tale, where everything goes wrong for the princess.
Right.
That's sort of what it felt like, because when the girls are alone, for example, before they start this reverse makeover, we see them wearing like tank tops, short shorts, like short dresses, see-through dresses and things like that. And I'm thinking, how are these girls buying those clothes? But then their grandmother is sewing them nun clothes. Like,
right.
Those like conservative black and gray clothes. Like,
I think it's possible that
just
their
like
parents,
didn't
but
make
I think it's
sense.
possible that their parents gave them those clothes before they died. So they're just wearing hand-me-downs from what their parents gave them.
Yeah, but I thought their parents died like long time ago. They
That's a
said
very good
something
point.
like 10 years ago or
I don't
something.
know. That's a very good point. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. Who knows how they got them? Yes.
Because that was such a big contrast. Like, how are they able to wear those things and then like have to show up in those draggy clothes later? And it's just like, when they're alone, it was like, oh, it's TikTok era. And then when they are with, the grandmother and learning these cooking things and household chores and things like that, it feels like they're in 1970.
I got you. I got you. Anyway, moving on in the film, Sone is like sneaking out of the house, to be with like her boyfriend, and they go off into the woods and do whatever, and who knows what they're doing, if they're having sex or just making out, stuff like that. Also at the same time, Lale is like dancing around in the house, being rebellious, like in her bra, and like the grandmother is like getting mad, like, what if somebody sees you? What if Errol sees you? And she doesn't care. So the girls are like finding ways to circumvent the strains that they're under being locked up in the house. And one day while Lale is like peeling potatoes or something, she kisses a newspaper, and then we realize that, oh, she really likes football or something like that. So she goes to Errol and says, can I come with you to the football game? Grandmother said, it would be okay if you said okay. And he said, there's too many men at the football game. You can't come. Right? So then all the girls are like watching TV one day, and they're eating dinner, and then Lale goes outside to see like the men are outside drinking raka and like having a good time, and there's the football match that's happening on TV that Lale is watching, but the guys in there are going absolutely insane, like having a riot and storming the pitch and everything like that. So then the TV announces that because the men were so bad at the football game, only women can come to the next match. And this will be the first time that this football team will ever have an all-woman crowd. And one of the funniest scenes is like one of the ladies is being interviewed by the TV reporter, and she says, I thank the men for letting me come to the football game. But I wanted to ask you about that scene. Do you know if that was like historically true? Like, there have been only female attended football matches in Turkey?
I don't know if that is actually true, but I do know that, yeah, Turkish men are famous for being aggressive in football matches. Like they would be showing up with, butchery knives and things like that, and then
Mm-hmm.
chase the other team down and all sorts of things. So maybe that might be true. I've never
Mm-hmm.
heard of it. If this happened like in the 90s or something,
Mm-hmm.
maybe, I don't know.
Okay, all right. And is it common for women to go to the football matches, or is it considered an only masculine thing to do?
Now it is. I think before it was seen as a masculine thing to do, but now, like, talking to my students who are mostly girls, some of them love football. They watch it
Mm-hmm.
with their dads. They go to the matches with their dads.
Yeah.
And, yeah, and I have like family members who love football. They've taken me, like my cousins who are girls. They've taken me to see football games and things. So now it's
Yeah.
like getting more, mixed.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, the Lale finds out that there's going to be an all-female match, and so she convinces her sisters, like, we gotta go. This is our one time to like do something that's just different, fun, and wild. And the girls are like, ain't no way we getting out of here. But Lale is like, nah, we could do it. So they like sneak out like slaves trying to run out from the plantation. they they run through the forest and like creep through holes and stuff like that. They make it to the street, but when they make it to the street, like one of the cars carrying all the ladies going to the soccer match speeds by them. So then they stop this other car with this like long haired hippie, and they beg the hippie to like drop them off in front of the lady van. So they're riding there, and then they finally like make it to the football match, and they're having a good ass time. They're like chanting, screaming, stomping their feet, throwing each other in the air. And when they, as they're throwing each other in the air, their grandmother is at home and looks on TV and sees that the girls are on TV at the football match. And the mother like has like a heart attack and falls down. And then like there was another lady, I don't know if it was the grandmother or another lady, she like destroys the electricity in the house, runs outside and throws rocks at the like electrical grid to like shut down electricity in the whole town to make sure that Errol and the other men cannot see that the girls are on TV acting an ass, throwing that ass in a circle for the whole world to see. That was one of the coolest and funniest scenes. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, from at the beginning, I really felt bad for Lale because she's just a kid. She's not like, she doesn't have tits yet, and she probably didn't have her period yet and things like that. So I felt really bad that she wasn't allowed to watch the game. And, yeah, and later on when they sort of made it with all these like adventures they had on the road, yeah, those scenes were really like heartwarming when they were having just so much fun being girls, being young at the football game. I liked those scenes. But yeah, I was also thinking like, what is the possibility of the camera showing them in the whole freaking like huge stadium?
I think the camera would show them. It's like, why are these 10-year-old girls here at a football match
I don't know. I
alone?
mean, it's all woman, and then like also, even if the camera shows them, what is the possibility of the grandma seeing them as well? Cause she was setting up the table and she just saw it like as she was setting up the
They were
table.
they were that crunk at the football match. Like they were getting so wild, the cameraman had no choice but to be like, "Who are these girls?"
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm pretty sure one of the girls like just flashed the camera or something, but they were throwing like Lale up in the
Yeah.
air and it was crazy.
Hmm.
But yeah, and then when we see the grandmother or another woman in the village, like just
Hmm.
basically breaking the whole village's electricity,
Yeah.
that
I,
was sort of giving, yeah, like she's trying to protect them, or they are trying to protect the girls, but they're doing it in such a weird way.
yeah. Yeah. So basically, the girls come back and the women of the house actually show grace by like protecting them and say, shh, come back inside. They, dress the girls back up in like their hijabs and niqabs or whatever, and like sew up the torn stuff that they did to their clothes. And basically the next day, grandmother and the other lady like take the girls into town to like show them off to the city to say, oh, our girls are now grown and they're ready to get married. And also, grandmother calls like workers to come and like board up the house. So they put bars all over the windows and all over the doors to make sure the girls cannot escape. And, there's, another scene when grandmother invites like a bunch of other ladies into the town to sit on the couch, and, they're talking and stuff like that. And I believe, I don't know what name of one of the girls. One of the problems of this film is that some of the girls' names slip by me, right? Like they don't leave an impression long enough for me to remember their name.
I
But
think you're talking about Salma.
Selma. Okay, so let's say Selma is, they're trying to marry off Selma. Selma says to grandma, can I speak to you in the kitchen? I have a boyfriend that I really love. If you try to marry me off to some guy, I'm going to scream. So
Oh no,
then
that's
mother,
Sonai. Sorry.
okay, well, whoever. Like I said, the point I was trying to make is that it doesn't matter about their names because they don't matter. So anyway, one of the girls is like saying, like, I don't want to marry this guy. I'm going to scream. And, the mother is like, yeah, okay, I promise you, I'm not going to marry you off. The girl comes back outside and the grandmother says, so yeah, will your son marry my daughter, please? And so basically they get married right then and there, like very quickly, all in that same scene. And, the girl is very depressed. And, then we also have like the marriage scene, where the girls are like all singing this traditional like Turkish song. If my father was here, he would come save me. If my brother was here, he would come save me. Blah, blah, blah, blah, blah. And they have the big wedding. They're shooting guns in the air, drinking raka. And, what did you think about those scenes?
Yeah, like I think as soon as it was like said that they were going to marry the girls off, the older girls, you see like that sort of light die down in their eyes, and I like that in their acting. I thought that was done well by the older girls. And yeah, like basically one of the older sisters, she has a boyfriend that she sneaks out with. She ends up marrying with her boyfriend, and the other girl ends up getting like, the other, some other random guy. But obviously one of them is sort of like being happily married off, and then the other one is not happy because she doesn't know the guy. The guy doesn't know her. They're not in love and things like that. It's basically like arranged marriage, right? And that I thought that dynamic was interesting. Like, yeah, there is a lot of tradition going on, but then there's one happy couple, and then there's one couple who is probably gonna like hate their lives.
I didn't see a happy couple in this thing. I didn't think any of the girls were happy getting married.
Sonai married her boyfriend that she was
Okay.
running off with. And the other girl got married to another guy that she did not know. So actually, one of the sisters, Sonai, got her happy ending. We don't know if she ended up being happy because they were just like high school or middle school boyfriend, girlfriend. But yeah, that's basically like in the wedding scenes, you can see like Sonai being happy, kissing all over the guy. And the other girl, she was just like taking raka shots because she was trying to forget what was happening.
Yeah. Well, there was also that conversation in the kitchen between Sonai and her sister, right? And the girl who was getting married to the guy she didn't like was saying like, how are you going to have sex with your husband or something because you're not a virgin? And she says, I am a virgin. And she's like, well, I'm not because I do it in the back way. I do it in the butt. And that was there in the story. It's hard for me to say like that, there's still a happy ending when there's still so much tension between them, about getting married in and of itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, like there were a lot of hints towards repressed sexuality. For example, also around those scenes, there was a scene where Lale found a book called My Sexual Life. And it looks like this very, very, very old book probably has like lies and myths about sexuality. Like in the book it says women can't have orgasms or something, possibly. And then like she's reading that. And yeah, Salma, the girl who is not happily married, she's wondering if she can like find a way out of having sex with her new husband. And Sonai is like sort of just lying to herself, saying she's a virgin when she's been like, you know, having anal sex, basically.
Right. It came kind of confusing with all of that stuff, with who got married and who didn't. But yeah, I was just focused mainly on Lale's story and them trying to escape, you know, because it didn't seem like overall like it was a happy situation.
There was only one.
Okay.
And we don't know if it's a happy ending either.
Yeah, not even really. But I thought it was interesting, one of the scenes when the family shows up to the first wedding, and the girl's family is like, we have to play hard to get. And then Lala says, now we play hard to get on the day of the wedding. We got engaged in one afternoon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I thought that was funny. It reminded me of our wedding, right? And if anybody wants to see our Turkish wedding, just go on my channel, My Big Fat Turkish Wedding, not hard to miss. And, yeah, go ahead.
Would you rather have a wedding like this than our wedding?
Yeah, I want someone to shoot guns in there. Hell yeah.
Yeah, I mean, shooting guns is popular, especially like weddings who are not in the city. Because in the city, I think it's dangerous.
Yeah. I think in the way they shot that wedding scene, they showed like a lot of the contradictions about getting married under a patriarchal system, right? Cause like even the song that they were singing, I wanted to ask you if that was a traditional song. Cause in the song, they're saying lyrics like, if my brother was here, if my father was here, they would come to me, they would save me. If my mother was here, she would take me away. You know what I mean? It sounds like, you know, in the music, getting married is sort of like a funeral to this girl's like life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a tradition. We call it Kına Gecesi, and it means like henna night. And it's basically a night where it's all girls. It's like our bachelorette. But yeah, it's all girls, and you know, the bride is in the middle, and all the girls sing this sad song because now the girl is flying away from the house. So, you know, the father won't be able to protect her, the mother will be crying and things like that, and that's like the symbolism of the woman leaving the house and not being their property anymore, and it's giving to someone else. But yeah, now it's still very popular. People do it, but not in the same sense, obviously. But it's like a night where everyone cries.
Yeah, I could understand. It was kind of interesting seeing that dichotomy between, you know, what's supposed to be a happy night and actually this sort of like funeral for this girl's freedom. And, yeah, basically after the wedding, the bride and groom go off to like a room somewhere and they're having sex. And, the parents are waiting outside like, we need to see the sheets. We need to see the sheets. And, the guy gets up and says, just a minute. He's looking all over the sheets and he's like, where's the blood? Where's the blood? And she's like, I don't know. I'm a virgin. I told you I'm a virgin. And he's like, oh God, bitch, bitch, if you ain't no virgin, I'm gonna fucking kill you. And so, yeah, they basically find no blood on the sheets. So then they end up taking the girl to the, hospital and doing a test on her. And, you know, the doctor says, you know, if you were a virgin, you would bleed. And so then she says a comment like, I guess I slept with the whole world then. And, yeah, the doctor finds out, well, your hymen is still there. Maybe it'll break, you know, later on or when you're giving birth, but it'll break. And, he asked her like, why did you say you slept with the whole world? And she said something like, I just felt like that was the right thing to say, or I'm just sick of being asked. You know what I mean? What did you think about those scenes?
First of all, yeah, there is that thing, very conservative families who actually care about virginity. They do check the sheets, but they're not there in the wedding night just like 2 seconds after they get into the room, knocking on the door, give me the sheet, give me the sheet. Like, that was just like insane to see, because it's usually like, okay, they go there and then in the morning mother comes to change the sheets and then sees the blood or something like that. You know, it's not like that. So that was a bit excessive.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the whole hospital scene, like her going to the hospital with her gown, like they were about to reverse the wedding if she was not a virgin or something. Like, it's too late. And also I think because like the reason she said that she slept with the whole world or something, I thought she was trying to get out of the situation, late or not. Maybe like somehow she is not a virgin.
Yeah.
And then they would disown her as a wife. And then she can just like continue living her life.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how I felt. Like, what did you think about it?
I thought that was just a very sad scene. Now that you said it about the parents, you know, knocking at the door right after their kids fucked, like the way you make it sound, yeah, that does sound crazy. But, yeah, that was just it's an interesting culture, you know. I don't know of any other culture that, you know, would check the sheets to see if there's blood. Maybe some other Muslim societies, but I don't remember that being a thing in Tunisia. Right? And I haven't heard about that in other Muslim countries.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a very extreme tradition. It's usually today, they don't do it a lot.
Yeah.
Or most families don't do this.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, like the other girl, the other sister, Eche, she's about to get married too, because Lale comes downstairs one day and sees like a bunch of old ladies in the living room. And you know, whenever old ladies are in the living room, they want one thing. They want that girl's butt for their son. So Lale is like mad at Eche because she's like getting tea and she's like tearing up the kitchen, right? She spits in the lady's coffee and stuff like that. And is trying to just make it hard for Eche. But Eche goes out there and she's like going along to get along. She's going along with the flow. So Lale is like starting to get sick of this whole thing. She like breaks out of the house and like tries to run away. But then the hippie truck driver comes and he, you know, says, hey, I don't think you can walk to Istanbul. Maybe I can just take you home. So Lale gets taken back home and brought back up into the house by her sisters. And, you know, she's still like raising hell. And, you know, Eche just keeps on like eating and looking sad. And meanwhile, the girls are trying to like pretend they still have freedom. Like they're pretending to swim on the bed and, you know, playing fantasy games in their head and stuff like that. What did you think about any of those scenes, if anything to say?
Yeah, it was like sad, but also sentimental. I guess sentimental to see the girls still trying to cling on to their childhood, cling on to their like creativity, to their dreams when they're playing around the house. And when I saw like Lale spitting in the coffee, it's like one of the traditions where if the girl who's likely to be wed brings the coffee, she puts like salt in the husband's coffee. And they say, like, the old wives' tale says that, oh, she does that because that means he would even drink poison out of her hands or something. And when I saw that scene in the movie, I thought, okay, I think the girls did that because they didn't want to get married. And then the moms just made up an excuse for it and sort of like played it as something else. Like it was a love story or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, those traditions felt like a bit hypocritical.
Yeah. Yeah. I just liked how in this film there were no boring parts. Like this movie could have gotten extra sentimental, extra depressing, and just focused on one thing for a hella long time. But I like how once again in this film that runs for an hour 40, it doesn't feel like an hour 40. So like things happen, they make you feel something, but it doesn't dwell on those feelings, right? And it just gives you enough time to breathe and contemplate. There's so much good pacing in this film, right? So, you know, there's a scene later where Lale is like trying to like escape by hopping in Errol's car and trying to drive, but she doesn't understand that you gotta take it out of neutral, motherfucker. So she's just in the driveway, just revving up the engine, tearing up this man's suspensions and all sorts of stuff. Meanwhile, also Lale at night sees like Errol sneaking in and out of the room. but there's no explanation for that. And so then one day also, the girls are in the back seat of Errol's car as he's going downtown to the bank. And Lale is like looking at these signs like saying buses to Istanbul. So she's trying to get to Istanbul by any means. And she's also telling the other girls like, hey, let's go to Istanbul. Also at the same time, one of the guys who's the boyfriend of one of the other girls says, hey, what's up, baby? And the other girls get out of the car, Lale and them. Right, Lale and her sister, right? They go to the bus stop. And meanwhile, the big sister is in the back seat of the car while Errol is in the bank, and they roll up the windows while the boy is in there popping the bra off, moving the panties to the side and getting it in. And the other people in the town are in the balconies like, hey, what is happening here? And that girl is bold and brave. She is getting some dick in the back seat in a 5-minute quickie. That is savage. And Lale has to like try to distract Errol from going back to the car, and she tells him, hey, let's go get ice cream. And Errol's like, bitch, I ain't getting you shit. So they walk back to the car, tension is high, they get back in, and nothing happens. That was, man, this is such a good movie for the tension and just the funny points like that. I don't know, I just really like that. What did you think of that scene?
That scene was crazy. Once again, a bit unrealistic because, like, the part I get is I feel like Ece at this point, she's like, they're gonna marry me off anyways, right? I might as well do whatever, fuck whoever, eat whatever, and just be miserable for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah. So she does something like that, but it's at the same time, like, it's impossible to do that when you're growing up in a place like this. So you're just gonna like get a guy in the car and have a 1-minute quickie. Like that just to me feels very like just so unrealistic.
I think that was trying to show like Ece's resistance to it all, because when she's giving coffee and tea to the old ladies, it looks like she's like accepting the fact she's about to get married off. But when in reality, like she's still trying to resist and have her own independence, right? So getting some dick in a way is radical and revolutionary for her.
Yeah, it is. And I get that part. But when you put it in like this sort of trying to be realistic movie, it just feels a bit like, okay, they took this part from an American movie and just like sort of put it in the Turkish movie. Because that never happens in Turkey. Like, I don't know.
Y'all be having sex in the backseat. Stop.
Like, of course, having sex in the backseat happens, but not in the broad daylight in the middle of the town with their windows open while your uncle is in the bank for 5 minutes.
Errol's windows were hella tinted. He got gangster tints. His tints you can't see inside.
Yeah, but they started having sex and then rolled the windows. And by that time, everyone was out in the balcony looking at them and watching them. Like,
but keep it real, Ece got a hell of a story. That's a hell of a hookup story, no?
Yes, and probably not going to be able to tell anyone.
But she survived it. She did it. They did that. For real, for real. Like, I think that boy was in the back seat, though. There ain't no way he like got in and out that quick. So I think he was secretly hiding in the back seat, and then when they finally got home, he like ran out. He busted open his eyes.
No, but that's why it's like unrealistic.
I don't think it's unrealistic. I think it's very realistic.
Because you see that in American movies. No, I've never seen that in any other Turkish media, in any other form.
Yeah, but Turkish people are like all other people. They have sex in weird places. Somebody is having sex in a bathroom right now in Turkey, in a place you would not expect.
Of course.
We were in Turkey watching Whirling Dervishes. I open up my phone and somebody airdrops me them fisting themselves. Now that's Turkey.
Wait, we don't know for sure if that guy was Turkish.
Yes, that was a hairy asshole and a hairy fist. His whole body was Chewbacca.
We were surrounded by tourists.
Now, ain't nobody hairy like a Turkish man. Stop it. You know, but like I know. Don't play with me.
The thing is, like, yeah, like if you're talking about 2024 Istanbul, yeah, that shit might happen. But the world that's, Gamze created in this little village, that is like impossible.
I think it's totally possible. Totally possible. Because this is the truth, and you've even told me this. In small towns in Turkey, ain't nothing else to do but hunch. Ain't nothing else to do but hunch on each other. Just
Yeah,
like in small town Louisiana, they ain't no sports, ain't no teams, ain't no television, no. You get what I'm saying? We just fucking.
yeah, I know. It's like people have sex a lot in small towns and things like that, but not like that.
Oh yes, they do. I
That's what I'm
disagree.
saying. Not in broad daylight with the car windows rolled down and in just like in the middle of the town, like literally
Okay.
in the middle.
We're going to have to agree to disagree. I'm telling you what happens in Turkey. What happens in Turkey is what happens everywhere else in the world. People be fucking in places that you don't even, somebody's getting their cheeks clapped, astaghfirullah, in a masjid right now. In a masjid, someone's getting their shit beat open right now.
That might be true. That might be true, but they're doing it secretly. I know those motherfuckers. They're doing it secretly. Cause everybody wants to be the freaking like, I don't know, angel in front of everyone. That's how the Turkish little society works.
Go Etche, go Etche, go Etche, go. There we
And
go.
definitely go Ajay, cause she was getting that D. I'm just saying like it just felt like a bit like from an American movie, you know?
No, that was hella real. That was the realest thing we've ever. That's probably one of the top 10 scenes we've seen in film this year.
Okay. I mean, I can't argue with that.
But yeah, what happens next? You know what happens next? You pick it up.
Okay, so yeah, what happens next? They go to the house and then it's nighttime and now the boy who had sex with Ece in the car, he's downstairs and he's yelling like, I guess he's drunk, I don't know. He's like, I love you, you be mine and things like that. And girls get a bit scared and Lale throws like stuff down to the boys saying like, go, go, go. While at the same time, grandmother is awake and she's saying like, Errol, go downstairs, like someone is there. So yeah, and then next day, Lale sees Yasin's car, the guy who picked them up for the football match.
Yeah, hippie driver.
Yeah, hippie driver, and his name is Yasin. So she sees him coming down the road, and then she has these like red heels, and she puts them on because Yasin made a comment about her shoes the other time. When she was trying to walk to Istanbul, she stops Yasin and tells him, like, you have to teach me how to drive a car because I don't know how and you have to teach me. And first Yasin is like, no, I can't teach you. What if someone sees us together? But then he agrees and like, you know, he teaches her how to drive and there's that cute moment where they're, you know, driving and she's learning and things like that.
Wait,
And
I
then,
gotta ask you this. I gotta ask you this. In black cinema, we have white savior as a trope. Is Yasin a male savior in feminist film?
it didn't feel like that to me. It felt like a big brother, like that they were missing maybe who would be on their side because Yasin wasn't necessarily trying to save her. He was just like teaching her something. Like Yasin didn't come and like, you know, save her from the house or anything like that, you know?
Hmm. Okay,
So
all right.
what, why did it?
I thought maybe it might be construed as like, oh, see, look, there's some good men in this world, right? And you know, oh, look at this, a man is coming to save the little girl from the evil patriarchy palace.
It didn't feel like saving necessarily. It felt
Hmm.
more like, you know, he was giving some additional information. And driving is one of those symbols for women, I think, especially
Hmm.
in the Muslim world where, you know, it sort of gives you freedom.
Hmm. Hmm. All right, all right. Well, yeah, go ahead. You can continue.
Yeah, so after Lale learns how to drive, she goes back to the house and she climbs up the wall to her room because she sneaked out. And then the next day, of course, they are putting like more, um, what do you say that? Like more things on the windows? What is that
Hmm.
called?
Yeah, bars and stuff.
Yeah, they add like more bars. They're basically like, you know, trapping them even more into the house. And next day, or the same day, they are having like lunch or dinner or something like that. And Ece, their big sister, is like making these gestures like the middle finger and things like that, and making the other girls laugh. And their grandmother and Errol is getting mad, and they don't understand what's going on. And I'm a bit confused about this part of the movie, because then we basically see Errol get mad at Ece, and then Ece goes into the room, and then we hear a gunshot. And basically Errol takes the other two girls and tells them to like go outside. And then the next scene we see is like this funeral. And yeah, all the sisters are crying and they're really sad. And I guess Ece died.
So I looked this up, and Ece committed suicide. But the way
That's
it's
what I
shot in the
thought.
film, we don't see whether she hung herself or shot herself or anything like that. We just, see this loud commotion that seems to happen. It happens so quick. You might almost think that Errol killed her, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's a fault of this film, but I'm not going to fault the film for that. I think the film does a good job on just keeping good pace. That happens, and then the next thing happens without us dwelling on it too much, right? I don't know, but what did you think about that? Was that a fault of the film for making that kind of so ambiguous?
I mean, there isn't really long, draggy shots in the film, which I think makes it easier to watch. So I agree with you on that, but I do wish that they made it obvious that it was a suicide. Because that's what I was thinking too. Was it Errol or was it a suicide? Because I heard the gunshot. But then I thought, okay, maybe it's a suicide because Errol like just dragged away the girls. And then he didn't go to jail. Also, later on, I felt like that. But yeah, I just wish they made it a bit longer. Like they could have given that to Ece. I think Ece deserved that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. Continuing the story.
Yeah, basically, like the days after that, the girls are mourning, and the older town women are bringing them food all the time. And and Lale is like really, really upset. And she's like sort of planning her escape now a little bit, but she doesn't know what she's gonna do next. Before they went to the football match, they basically made these like pillows that looks like bodies so they can fool their grandmother. And Lale cuts her hair and adds hair to those pillows to make it look more believable. And the next day, like their grandmother wakes up and says like, "Oh, what happened to your hair?" and things like that. What happens after that?
Lale starts like stealing money to like help them escape. Errol is like passed out on the couch. I guess that's his type of mourning because he switched from wearing like button down dress shirts to like a tracksuit and falling asleep apparently drunk on the couch. I find it interesting after Ece's suicide, nobody seems to like reflect on the way they're treating the girls or anything. It's sort of like the tyranny continues to get ramped up. Well, one girl died. I guess we'll just continue to abuse them and marry them off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that is very true. And I did not think about that because I guess like it sort of seemed not as their fault. They don't really blame themselves by the way Ece killed herself because they're like, oh, just like she couldn't handle the pressure of being a woman in this place. And most women don't commit suicide. They just like go along with it.
Yeah. And then there's a scene where Lale wakes up late at night and she sees Errol leaving, and she follows Errol downstairs and finds that the grandmother is like fighting with her son, right? Saying, stop it, Errol. And Lale's like, I came down here to get some milk. And they tell her to like go back upstairs. She sees her other sister up there, and she's like trying to wipe something out of the bed. And Lale's like, what are you doing? And she's like, nothing. And then the next day we see that the mother is telling, the sister, the older one, like, you're a woman now. It's time for you to get married, and we're going to save these sheets for you later and stuff like that. So the other sister gets, how can I say this? Engaged to some guy, and Lale's like, we gotta escape now. And so, that leads up to like the big final scene, right?
Yeah. And the meanwhile, we see Lale like trying to find the car's key. Like she's constantly looking for Errol's car's keys, and then she also like is pacing around the house, trying to sort of like plan an escape route. Right? She's trying to see where like there aren't any bars or some out from the house.
Yeah.
But we don't know exactly like if she's really gonna do it. It's just sort of like a hinting.
Yeah, yeah. This movie is like Divorced in Black meets Emancipation meets The Wild Pear Tree.
That's a
Or what-
crazy combination.
This movie is low key like a slave escape story. This is like Harriet Tubman, but in Ankara.
It is. It is.
Because like Lale is trying to escape the same way like Frederick Douglass got free. I was gonna wait till Massa fall asleep, and I was gonna take the horse keys or something. I'm gonna take. Like this, it's kind of funny. I
And
guess once again, the film is dialed up to such a degree, you know, how the parents and the society are like abusing these girls. Like you just want them to be free at some point in this film, and you're just like rooting for them, like Django when he's like about to murder like the slave masters. You know what I mean? You're
yeah,
like,
and also like, wasn't it crazy that a girl like Lale, like she's like what 10 or something, is planning to drive to Istanbul?
yeah.
Like, isn't that a crazy plan? What the hell is she gonna do? How is she gonna drive?
And the funny thing is, in this movie, it ends up working out exactly the way you expect it. Like, like the movie doesn't go insane and say, so in the end, Lale drives to Istanbul. Like what happens at the, how she actually drives is exactly like very real. I like how this film is grounded in a little bit of reality. You might say the film is a bit extreme, but that part at least was very real.
Yeah, just like some of the cultural parts are extreme, but yeah, that part was real because I'm thinking like, okay, she only drew one time. How's she gonna drive all the way to Istanbul?
Yeah.
And at that point, I sort of understood that this was somewhere in Black Sea.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like kind of far away. It's 1,000 kilometers, they said.
Yeah. They out there in Giresun.
I don't know if they're in Giresun. I think it's more like Western Black Sea.
Yeah. Yeah. But, anyway, so, Lala is like, we're gonna break out, we're gonna get free. The night of the wedding, Errol is, going outside, and also the grandmother goes outside while Lale and her sister that's about to get married are in the house. And Lale, like, slams the door shut, locks it, and puts a bunch of like furniture behind the doors and does the same for all the windows and stuff like that. So then the movie becomes Straw Dogs.
Yeah.
And Lale says to her sister, "You don't want to marry that dork, do you?" And she's like, "No, I don't." And so, yeah, we're gonna get free, bitch. So Errol is having a fit. He's like getting mad, like, hey, come here, girl, come here, let me talk to you. Bitch, you better open this door.
Yeah, it was sort of hilarious. Because also the girl, what's her name? Nur or something?
Yeah.
She was like throwing stuff out of the window to her grandmother saying, I don't want to marry him. I don't want to marry him. And like, they can't do anything.
Yeah.
Because they locked the house so much.
And I thought it was interesting, she threw the bed sheet out that had the blood on it from when her uncle basically raped her, right? And the other family is like, oh, I can't believe this. I'm so embarrassed. And, that was big embarrassment for Errol too. I liked how in this film, all the bad guys, or at least Errol in this case, almost got like justice done to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, cause like she was also saying, oh, I'm gonna tell to the police and things like that.
Yeah.
And it was also pathetic seeing like the grandma, trying to convince the husband and his family. And she was saying like, oh, everything is okay. Let the drums play. And then they're playing like music there while Errol is yelling at the girl.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, that was actually a pretty intense scene. Like the climax of this film does not disappoint. And there's like this very intense part where the girls are like hiding off in the bush and Errol is like, sneaking by close to them, but the girls are able to like escape and jump in the car right before Errol can chase them down. And Errol is kind of drunk too, so he's like sloppy all over the place. And Lale is driving the car for like a good 5 minutes, and then she meets a curve and runs it into a bush.
Yeah, like what did she expect? It's nighttime. She's in a adrenaline rush.
Yes. She can barely see over the wheel.
Yeah.
Like that was perfect. It was
Yeah.
absolutely perfect. But
And,
the girls like hide off in the forest, right? And they wait till all the people are gone, and then they sneak away. And I believe they meet hippie guy, and the hippie guy drives them to the bus station. The girls use the money that they have, and they go to Istanbul, and they knock on the door of their teacher. Her boyfriend answers, and Lale sees her old teacher from the beginning of the film and gives her a deep hug and a kiss. And I believe Etche is with her too. So out of the five slaves, I mean girls, that this movie started with, only 2 survived. That's a horrible like survival rate. It was crazy. But yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. And also one thing about the hippie guy, like, Lale, when they are stuck in the house, she's trying to get away. And so she calls like different grocery stores asking them about Yasin. Cause
Hmm.
she knows Yasin works for a grocery store.
Yeah.
And, yeah, some guy says like, oh, I don't let like, gay people work for me or something like that. And he uses like the F word, right? So we know also somewhat like Yasin is also an outcast
Well,
in
I
that
don't think.
town.
Well, he said it in Turkish. I don't know if he used the Turkish equivalent for the gay slur.
Yeah, yeah,
He did.
yeah.
Okay, but I'll just say this: I don't think that shows that the hippie guy was gay. I just think that was trying to say, oh, in this society, they view people with long hair as gay.
Yeah, that exactly. And they do. Like
Mm-hmm.
whenever a guy like wears jewelry or has
Mm-hmm.
long hair,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they're considered like metrosexual or homosexual.
Yeah,
Yeah, just not manly enough.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I like the ending of the film. I thought it would have been better if the teacher had a girlfriend instead. You know, like instead of jumping from the worst type of patriarchy to beta male patriarchy, as if that's any better. I thought the film would have had a better ending if, like, you are now safe. You are now in the sisterhood of scissoring sisters, whatever, right? Like that would have been better. But I liked it. It was cute, and it was a happy ending.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's sort of like it feels unresolved in a way because we don't know what's going to happen with the teacher. Because, yeah, is she going to like take the 2 girls in and just like be their mom or something? Like, and what about like their grandmother and Erol? Like, are they just going to leave the girls
Hmm.
there in Istanbul? Like, aren't they going to call the police or something like that? So it's a bit unresolved and I just didn't feel at ease completely. But
Hmm.
for the moment, I felt at ease.
I
Just
got
for
you.
that moment. But
I got you.
yeah.
But overall, I like the film. The film does bother me though when I think about feminism, right? Like, there are so many women in this film who help the men abuse the girls. It really makes me think that, with all the advantages that women have to some degree, with the overall sentiment around the world that sexism is wrong, sexism is a big problem, right? I find it hard to still see women supporting other women being oppressed, right? Supporting men oppressing women, if that makes more sense. And yeah, that was just hard for me to wrap my mind around. That could be, so common, so easy for women to do. Um, yeah, but that's just a bigger issue in this film. That's really hard to talk about just in short snippets, but it's something that I think about often.
Yeah, there are women who side with patriarchy when it comes to like, sexism and things like that. And then they enable sexism.
Hmm.
And it is more common, I would say, in the older generation because they grew up in a certain way. And just like, for example, Lale's sisters and her grandmother, they've been like brainwashed more by
Hmm.
patriarchy, right?
Yeah.
So it's harder to like turn those things in, and those type of women have extreme internalized sexism. So yeah, it should not happen. And I think it's somewhat getting better in terms of like, at least, talking in terms of Turkey, the younger generation is better at that. Do we still put each other down? Like, yes, we do. But I think we are learning to check ourselves when it comes to that, and also check each other. But yeah, I mean, especially in family dynamics, that happens a lot. Like, even though I have a mom who is fairly like modern when it comes to like sex and things like that, she did those things too. Like, she enabled sexism towards me as well. And there were times where I checked her, and there were times when I internalized that.
Yeah, it's like it's like growing up as a black person in America. There's so many things in our culture that is anti-black that we say to each other. Like, so common to say, niggas ain't shit. You know what I mean? Just that phrase alone. Like, you hear that, as soon as you gain consciousness and understand language around you. Like, that tells you so much about how you're supposed to view yourself, and that's just one example. Good hair, bad hair. You know what I mean? That sort of stuff. And yeah, internalizing those things is a part of it, and so many people end up just siding with the part that diminishes the self. And I could see the same thing happening for women too. But I just really liked how this director touched on this story. It wasn't just like a movie like Precious, right? In Precious, it's just drama after drama after drama. Or like The Color Purple, right? Until Celie is like reconnected with her sister, right? It's just drama after drama after drama. Poor Celie, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this film allowed for the girls, even though they're living with Mister, to still maki dada.
Yeah, true. There were like common, happy scenes that we see that the girls had together.
Yeah.
And there weren't also like those draggy long scenes where, for example, we would see just one girl for 5 minutes in front of the camera. They weren't that. I like the cinematography of it. I agree with you, but I can also understand why some Turkish people critique it in a way that they're saying like it's made for the Western eye, because it's very easy that a person who doesn't know anything about Turkey or doesn't know a lot about Turkey would watch this and then sort of assume this is what all Turkish families are like.
Definitely. By the way, I think my guy Abdul Hazred is my guy Nelson Moreno. And I just want to say what's up to him, if that's him.
Yeah, that's me.
Oh, what's up, man? Welcome back to Elon Musk's Nazi website.
Yeah, right-wing propaganda website.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, no, thanks for having you here too, man. We're going to be covering your film Elephant, right? And I'm really looking forward to that, boy. I'm going to tear that thing up. But you have any other film
Wait,
suggestions for us?
what sense?
Pardon, what's up?
Are you gonna tear that movie up in what sense?
Oh man, I'm gonna go in. Like, Loki is funny. Loki Elephant is funny. But it's funny
Because
for
it's really
me.
bad, you think it's...
No. It's a really good and important film. But I
Yeah.
find it funny that, films like this were made 20 years ago, and we've still had, in fact, last decade, 2010 to 2020, we had like 350 school shootings. At least like hundreds of kids have died in school shootings since the film Elephant and shit like that. So I just find it funny, like, we have these stories in our mind and we still don't give a fuck. Right? That's what I find
Yeah,
hilarious. It's dark. It's real dark.
there's a massive white elephant problem in America.
Yeah, the elephant in the room is that, at any
But
moment
it's
that
white.
could happen. Well, it's white gay Nazis, yeah. It's white gay Nazis, that's one thing. But I don't want to give it all
Familiar,
away.
huh? Why gay Nazis and certain Fuentes, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I guess you'll never get kissed, bro.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, I don't think you've seen this film, huh? Mustang, 2015 Turkish movie.
I've never seen a Turkish film. I will. I have one or two in my playlist, but not this.
Okay. Yeah, we're trying to make sure we cover some Turkish films, but yeah, I think we're gonna wrap this up. So, Actor, you got any final score for this?
Final score, I'm gonna give it an 8,
Okay, why an
honestly.
8?
Well, the 2 points I took out were some unrealistic dialogue that felt weird and AI a little bit, and then also somewhat unrealistic, like cultural representation a
Mm-hmm.
little bit. Because yeah, as a film that's being showed in Europe and around the world, it could give the wrong impression.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we should be too careful about that, but at the same time, I felt bad that this movie wasn't selected for Turkey, but it was selected for France
Mm-hmm.
because Turkish, Senate didn't want to put this movie.
Really? Like this
Yeah.
film is banned in Turkey?
No, it's not banned, but they said, oh, we don't want to put this movie for the festival because we don't approve of this cultural representation.
Right, right. Oh,
Yeah.
I get that. I get that. It might seem, like it's putting all the bad light on Turkey, right? It
Yeah,
kind
a
of makes
little
Turkey
bit.
look like Afghanistan or something.
A little bit, yes, because it's lacking, like, at least it's lacking the time. So
Hmm.
it feels like you don't really know if this is happening now.
I
And it
think that might
is.
be the beauty of this film though, because sexism in Turkey is such an eternal, lasting problem. It's like if you made a film about racism and you don't know if it's 1950 or 2025, right? I think that could still work. I think that would work very well, actually, because it's showing that it's an eternal, lasting problem.
Yeah, but it's much like, for example, racism is a much deeper problem than just being called the N word, right?
Hmm.
Or being, I don't know, chased down by like racist people. So it's
Hmm.
sort of like that. Like sexism in Turkey is much deeper. It's much intricate and woven into the society and the
Right, but
culture.
even though there are the microaggressions and the weird sexual comments you might get, there are also still forced weddings. There are
Yeah.
also still women getting abused, women getting killed, stuff like that. So two things do exist, right? We got the
Yeah.
microaggressions, but we also got the in-your-face brutality.
Yeah. And that's why I thought it was like the Turkish critics were a bit hard on this movie.
Hmm.
Because there isn't anything wrong to show like the most tragic thing too. Like
Right.
you can show those very tragic stories. So
Well,
that's my score though. 8. What
well,
about you?
well, no, I just want to say this. One of the things that I noticed about your culture, in my opinion, and maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong, is that I feel like Turkey is a society that wants to be blameless. They don't like accepting or dealing with guilt or shame or any sort of blemish on their character. That's why Turks talk about the Ottoman Empire as if it was a good thing by and large. That's why they gloss over the slavery. That's why they make it seem like the conquering of the Balkans was kind of okay. You get what I'm saying? It
Yeah.
seems like Turkey by and large doesn't like to have any sort of negative stain on their jacket.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's true. Because even though we've did like major crimes throughout the history, they never really like showed up that much, like the way like Nazis showed up in Germany, for example.
Hmm.
And yeah, I guess like Turkish society does sort of hide behind that
Yeah.
and sort of make themselves seem like, oh, okay, we rised up from our ashes and we started this country and we didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah. Let me ask Nelson, in your country, in Portugal, right? Y'all had the big empire. Like, how is it taught in the Portuguese society? Is the Portuguese empire seen as like a good thing, by and large, do
Yeah,
you think, by most
definitely,
people there?
definitely seen as mostly a good thing. Yeah, for sure. It's like a golden age.
Really?
Yeah,
Really? So, how did they talk about, like, I don't know, the slavery in Brazil or conquering Mozambique?
I just they don't talk about it much.
Mm,
Yeah,
I mean, like in Turkey, we don't talk about the slavery in Ottoman Empire at all.
mm. Or the Armenian genocide.
Or the Armenian genocide. Like, a lot of people deny that.
Mm. Damn, damn. Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like, I feel like, Turkish people might really not like this film because they want to talk about sexism, but on their terms, you know?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Very true. And yeah.
Yeah.
Really, I don't have anything else to add to that, but that's true.
But I got to ask you this because last night, we were talking about racism and stuff like that, and you were saying like, people on the outside of America might have a more objective view about the racism in America, so they can come to a better conclusion. Well, technically, Deniz, the director, she's Turkish, but she grew up in France. Maybe she has a more objective view about talking about sexism in Turkey.
But she's still Turkish.
By
That
just
does not count.
But just by ethnicity, right? That's like saying I'm African, right? Like, okay, I can't go and talk about Nigeria like I know what I know. Like I know what I'm talking about,
Yeah. I mean, what I was trying to say with that comment was that maybe it's easier for outsiders to see the injustice the way it is. Or it's easier to accept the injustice.
Okay. Nelson, I gotta mute you, man. You over there cooking crack, man. I can hear the bowl scraping. Like you over there cooking up rock and shit like that. But anyway, I actually give it a 9. I give it a 9. Cause even though there are some plot holes in it, not plot holes, just like some problems in the film, I think it's actually pretty fun and entertaining to watch. Simple story, it's moving, it's touching, and really nice to look at,
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's all I gotta say. But I'm gonna holler at Nelson. Nelson, let me know what time tomorrow works for you to do the elephant review, if you want to stick around for the whole thing.
Just like, I don't know. I wake up pretty like in the afternoon. I don't know what's the time there in Hungary.
I think we're only an hour away. We could
To the
probably do it in
afternoon?
the evening. Yeah, we could probably do it like in the evening or something. Actually, I don't know, what time are you free?
Just
Yeah.
no. Give me hours. Give me like 10 hours from now, 15 hours from now. I can do that.
10 hours from now? Okay.
Okay.
No? Acting?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Bet. But all right. Well, this has been episode 80, Simon and Acting Movie Reviews. If you got any movies you want us to watch, to review, to talk about, let us know. We'll probably be doing these on the weekend because we've got a lot of work going on and stuff like that. But shout out to everybody who's been supporting.